On live with Ted Dietrich.
All right, I'm Ted with United Refrigeration, 26 in St. Clair in Cleveland. We're a large wholesaler around the United States. I've been in the wholesale industry for probably close to 30 years now, and worked in the field for a little while and everything like that, so definitely have a little bit of background. Mainly refrigeration, some heating and air, but mainly our company is refrigeration. So basically what we're looking at today is what is beyond R22 and 410, because that's what we're going to be faced with really quick. I mean, there's a timetable in here on a slide, but the time is coming up really quick. So basically what we're saying here is there's a lot of factors that are pushing what refrigerants are going to be utilized, what equipment is going to be utilized, and how the two may integrate together. Basically, what we're trying to say is that it's always been about refrigerant management, but it's even more so now. The government is really pushing some lines of reclamation, equipment efficiencies, things like that. So basically, you have the phase out of R22, and soon enough you have the phase out of 410. You've got allocations, which are basically allotments that the manufacturers of refrigerant are allowed to source, either through raw product and introducing them with other product that they may either manufacture or outsource as well and put together into a blended refrigerant, or either use as an isolated component for a pure refrigerant. You've got sector limits. Sector limits are basically different facets that may use refrigerants. You have state SNAP, which is just regulatory compliancy, and it varies by state. I'm sure a lot of you know, a lot of stuff starts in California, kind of works its way east. There is a lot of push that whatever California is doing, that it stays in California.
I got a question.
Sure.
When they completely outlawed R22 in the year 2000, this is 22 years later. Why do we still have it around?
Because it's a very good refrigerant. I mean, it's efficient. Everybody knows it. It was plentiful. It was always being reclaimed and cleaned and
not making it anymore,
be sourced. Right? No, they haven't made it since 2010. So, but you know, you have a large sector of residential and commercial units that are air conditioning that are R22, and you still have a smaller factor of refrigeration systems that are out there that are still R22.
I get another question.
Yeah.
R22 is being phased out.
Yeah.
Right. And most of the last class that we had here, they talked about a replacement for R22. You can almost leave all your same equipment in there. Okay. But the point is that most of the units that I've changed out, I can't even count how many. It's been R410A.
Yes.
Now they're getting rid of R410A.
Yes.
Is there a replacement for R410A, or you get
there is no replacement for 410 in the stance that
you can replace everything.
Like you can. There's not going to be one refrigerant for every application. Yeah. First of all, as far as 410 as a gas, if you have an existing unit that has 410, if your question is there going to be something that I can basically put in that our existing R410A system? No.
It's not.
No, it's not. It's not developed as of right now. No. And most of the manufacturers said we don't even want to look at it. We don't even care.
Because I've talked to everybody in the 410A. Because 22 was going out. You know,
it was your only choice.
Yeah.
It was your only choice.
Yeah, but for a while, I mean, how long?
Well, I have something by then.
Allocation numbers are going to start stepping down, and like I said, there's going to be slides where we kind of explain the allocation and what happens and when and that kind of thing.
So I can buy R410A today.
Now you can.
Yes.
Soon
yes.
I cannot.
In coming time, it will be, in coming time, yeah.
Buy all once.
which that date is not solidified. I mean, there is a date, but again, things are changing and evolving, and there's reasons why that is, and we go into a little bit of that as well. But some of the other factors on refrigerants and what we're going to be going to is the energy efficiency. With the mandate of 13 SEER up north, 14 SEER down south, with the new mandates that are coming into effect as of next year, it's going to go to 14 SEER up north, and I believe it's either 15 or 16 down south. So it's just a matter of time before these energy efficiencies keep going up. The equipment gets more sophisticated. You're running inverter compressors, logic boards, sensors, all that kind of stuff to basically tell a board what is going on in multiple points of the system to try and run it as the most efficient system that it can run at. So based in that, that's where going forward, these new refrigerants are going to be taking more of a commonplace because of the efficiencies of these refrigerants. So another factor in all this too is building codes. You know, there's a lot of building codes where it's fine to put a unit outside on a building. Some, you know, townhouses, condos, you can't do it. It's got to be in this vestibule area, or you know, whatever. So there's a lot of building codes that may come into effect and affect the equipment that's going to be built further down the line. But as always, the main takeaway from this really is refrigerant management. It's first and foremost with all the manufacturers at this point, because of going forward, it needs to be stressed more and more and more. So this is a legislation. It's called the AIM Act. The AIM Act, years ago, when the Montreal Protocol came about, and that's when they started going off the global warming potential and trying to get rid of all the refrigerants, R12, R11, 113, you know, all these refrigerants, that was enacted. What ended up happening was some people stepped in and they said, we don't feel this is comprehensive enough. We need some hardcore dates in our industry, such as manufacturers. Manufacturers of refrigerant, manufacturers of equipment. They all wanted hardcore dates, because going loosely on the original Montreal Protocol was, it really didn't take a lot of that into effect. So what ended up happening was they came up with something that was called the Kigali legislation. And the Kigali legislation basically said, okay, here's where we're going to start to give dates on phase down of refrigerants. So everybody knew when those took place. The original Kigali, because of EPA wanting certain like finality on an agreement, they basically said that we're going to run this legislation for 9 years and see what happens in our industry. So they ran it. It went from 2010 to 2019. At 2019, they said, we think it's working pretty good. You know, we're going to continue this. We're going to leave it a little bit more open-ended now, and we'll see what happens. Well, right after they did that, manufacturers started to complain again. So what they ended up doing was the EPA got together with some manufacturers, refrigerant manufacturers, equipment manufacturers, leading sources in the industry, contractors, all kinds of different people. And they said, okay, here's what we're going to do. We need to manage this better. The Kigali Act was really good, but we need some more oversight. We need some more provisioning than what that allowed for us. So they came up with the AIM Act. The AIM Act is, it still follows the same phase down of the Kigali Act. So the dates have not changed. Nothing got pushed forward or back or anything else as far as this is the hardcore date of this refrigerant going out. But what the AIM Act actually ends up doing is they allow for facets of the industry, not just refrigeration or heating and cooling, companies that do sprinklers, foam fills, all different kinds of industries that still use HFC products. They basically said, okay, what we're going to allow you guys to do is to come up with a petition. we'll give 90 days, and after 90 days, we'll look at it and say, we think this is viable, and we need to really look into it, and at that point in time, they'll give them 2 years for them to bring it to legislation, as well as the industry board, if you will, that they've kind of created, and said how, you know, and say how viable is this petition that anybody can come up with. What this actually does is it gives our industry a little bit more say-so than we've ever had before. And again, keeping with the phase-out dates, we still know those dates. We can keep those in mind. And then also it gives better management, refrigerant management, as it says down below, to any of the new product that either is going to be developed going forward, or that's going to be used in combination with what they currently have to come up with any new refrigerants. So again, it's a balancing act of refrigerant management. Here we're back to this factor again on knowing that we're going to have to manage this better than we ever did. And this is being pushed governmentally through legislation, even though, like I said, this AIM Act actually keeps us more involved. It keeps us more in the mix. So some of those factors, you have the caps of the HFCs. So as of this year, January 1, 2022, that's when the allocation on what we're going to be stepping down happens. So from 100% baseline, as of this year, we step down 10%, and it goes down from there. So we're already feeling a bit of the pinch. Now,
What's SNAP?
SNAP was just, it's state by state regulation, essentially. There are a lot of states that kept common languages between the SNAP Act or the SNAP restrictions. Basically just, they're again, like SEER ratings, efficiencies, things like that that you have to maintain within installation of equipment and manufacturing of equipment too. So, but you have on one side the supply, which is the allocation. These manufacturers have their allocated amount, and then that being the supply. Then on the other side, you do have the usage. So it's our industry, the other facets of the industries that use HFCs. So again, it's all a balancing act through management. All right, so here is the step down. So again, like I say, you see the baseline at 100%, 2019. As of 2022, excuse me, that's when you went to a 10% reduction. So if you look at over here, the baseline, this is the cap. 303 basic, it's just a, I forgot what the NMT stands for. It's the number of allotted amount that we should have based on a CO2 efficiency. So the current US demand right now is at 342. So we're already exceeding what the baseline cap was. So that's why this step down is happening. So you can see as of 2024, we're going to go down an additional 30% from the 10 that we're already at now. So you're at a 40% reduction.
Good luck with that.
And that's what, 2 years away?
Good luck with
I mean,
that.
it's 2 years away. So that's what I'm saying. I mean, some of this stuff is going to really start smacking us in the face real quick. Decisions are going to have to be made about gases going forward. And a lot of it, you really won't have a choice, because if you handle a particular brand of equipment and they decide that they're going to go with X refrigerant, that's what you're going to be using. So there are different refrigerants that are already developed. There is a base for those, most of those refrigerants being developed, and there's issues and constraints with those that are already there and what it may mean for us in the future. But it never, if you look at the very bottom, it never gets down to 0. It's at 85. The reason why it's at 85 is because if the last day that you could actually manufacture a 410A system and it gets manufactured and it gets put in, you got to figure if it's maintained well, it's going to last 10, 15,
20 years.
20 years. So you still have to make refrigerant available. Now, that refrigerant that's made available may be a very small fraction of brand new refrigerant combined with reclamated refrigerant. And there is a percentage of mixture that's got to go, but that's essentially what you're going to end up with at that point in time. So, like I said, 2024, 30% reduction from where we're at now. And we're already feeling the effects at 10. You know, some of the factors of refrigerant going up right now is one of the manufacturers that was a combiner, let's call them. So they were taking product and mixing it to be sold to other people that were buying it to maybe use as a component or to mix other components that they can allocate or purchase to then make whatever refrigerant they want. So that manufacturer decided to get out of the business. And even though that they weren't a huge player, they were about 18%, it hurt. It hurt on a really bad way, because what ended up happening was one of the plants decided that they were going to shut down and do something different because they thought that they had plenty, and this 18% that they never thought about all of a sudden stopped. And then the other problem that we're having is raw product. Getting the actual raw product coming through either offshore markets or through the United States, we're having a hard time getting the product. The base of the majority of all the new products going forward is a refrigerant called R32. So that's what we're actually talking about, is R32. The sourcing of R32 there is some really tight constraints right now. One of the other issues is steel. Believe it or not, steel is a very big issue right now. I mean, if you source an equipment, like Tom said earlier, 20-some weeks, 26 weeks for equipment. A big part of that is steel. Worthington Cylinder, who makes the majority, probably 60%, 70% of all the refrigerant tanks that you get, they are running 7 days a week, 365 days a year, and they cannot keep up making refrigerant cylinders right now. There is a shortage on cylinders. I talked to our manufacturer, and he told me about a month ago, he said, we have refrigerant sitting in takers in our back lot. I have no tanks to put it in right now.
Wow.
I wonder if they'll do it with carbon fiber instead of steel.
I don't know. I mean, carbon fiber, I think, is still a costly item, and who knows what constraints are.
I think it gets
are
brittle
there.
under certain temperatures.
I mean, I don't know if it can withstand any sort of higher pressure. I mean, because all the new refrigerants, you're talking higher pressure too. I mean, you're talking 410 type pressures. So, all right. So they're showing you that CO2 is the baseline, and its global warming potential is 1. So the base of a lot of these new products being R32, it's 675. If you go all the way out to R22, you're 1810, and then 404, which all of us are used to, is right at 4,000. So that number is what they're trying to reduce. So they want to get it in between here, like close to here. At 750 is the number. 750 is the number.
Wow.
Good luck.
So you can see R32 hits that number. It's below 750, they're good with it. I mean, even if it were 749, they would be fine with it because it's below 750.
Yeah.
The other thing that if you think about it is 410A, let's just run the number down, call it 2,000. 404A, round the number up, call it 4,000. So for a manufacturer that has an allocation of product to be able to combine together and put it in a cylinder and sell it to you, they could make 2 tanks to every 1 tank.
Mm-hmm.
So do you think they're going to waste their time with this gas anymore? They don't want to waste their time at all. Like, they want 404 gone. Problem is, 404 is so deeply seated in our industry It's gonna be a rough one. So
So
they're-
they're mainly refrigeration.
It is mainly refrigeration, yeah. The 22, if you look at the number, it's really not that bad. I mean, 1810, really, comparatively, it's not that bad. The reason why R22 hit that number was its ozone depletion. The ozone depletion was way up there, and that number was when the original Montreal Protocol came out and said, excuse me, this is a really high greenhouse gas. We need to get rid of it. When they really started to understand what these gases do to the atmosphere, that's when they came out with GWP, the global warming potential. In R22, they looked at and said, well, should we do anything? They said no. We're just gonna leave it because we already made the call, and it's gonna be what it's gonna be. So they stuck to their guns on that one. So like I said, from a manufacturing standpoint, these two, 448, 449, for refrigeration and air conditioning, they're sitting at 1,300. This is an interim gas. 134A. I mean, it's been a mainstay. There's a new gas to replace it, but again, it's not at the 750 number. The replacement is 513. It's going to be an interim gas. So any one of these, or all of them, are gone. It's just a matter of time. So there's new classifications. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Oh, okay. There's new classifications of refrigerants, and we'll talk about those as far as how they factor into those numbers and everything. But basically, transitioning from R22 as an air conditioning system and refrigerant, our refrigeration refrigerant, we kind of still need to talk about this a little bit because, again, I mean, you know, 40% probably of residential and maybe even commercial is still R22. I mean, we're still dealing with this. There's leaks that are happening. The leaks are hopefully being fixed. There's more pressure to actually fix leaks now than there ever has been. And I think because of the cost of refrigerant, these owners are becoming more and more aware of cost, and they're like, you know, take some time, find the leaks, let's get this done, sealed up, and I don't have to worry about you coming back and gassing and going again. So that's why a little bit of this R22 material is going to be in there. So on retrofitting from 22 to 410, because I mean, that's where we're at right now. If you run into an R22 system, the system going in its place, it's going to be 410. The manufacturers have not geared up at this point for any of these new refrigerants that have come out, for the most part. So with R22, you're either going to retrofit or replace. Retrofit being whatever interim gas that you may be using, such as like you guys are using the blue on, and then basically making sure that it's maintained. Again, chasing those leaks. For the 410, again, just maintaining that equipment. As far as, like I said before, if there's an R410A system out there, they're not really looking at making any sort of gas to replace that. So, I mean,
Yeah, I've done a lot of installs, it's just 410A.
yeah. I mean, you may end up with systems that are 8 or 10 years old in the next 8 or 10 years, and you're going to tell the customer, listen,
That's it.
it's lasted its life now, and there's nothing I can do.
Yeah.
You know, you have to put in a new system because this refrigerant, you know, is too costly to actually try and put back in the system and maintain, because it's just going to go up and up and up and up. You know, I mean, look at the price of 22 right now. You guys price 22. I mean, nobody touches a can of 22 very often anymore, and it happened quick. It happened really quick. So when to maintain, that's pretty obvious, I think. You know, when there's leaks, there's no good retrofits. And again, like I said, the cost of trying to retrofit something over, they're just gonna have to replace the equipment. Again, just double checking leaks. You're gonna get to a point where you're not really topping off. You're going to try and chase the leak or replace the equipment. Just if you're using recovery tanks, or hopefully you are using recovery tanks, don't mix it. The problem with mixing it is they cannot separate the components. So it has to go into what they call a chemical burn to get rid of the refrigerant. And it's costly, and it's time consuming and labor intensive and everything. So you don't really want to do any of that. Let's see. R22, and even this on the air conditioning side, I guess this is not a bad slide, just because if you have an older, let's say maybe 8-year-old unit that's R22, when you're going to get a new compressor, if the compressor did short out or something like that, and the people just don't have the money to get a new system because you got to change out the coil, got to change out the outdoor unit, the compressor that you're going to get for replacement is going to have POE oil. All the new refrigerants, that's the oil that they're going to be running on. The nice thing about now with 22 is there are alternatives out there. You guys may be using those already. There's some good choices, there's some really good choices, there's some really bad choices out there too. And that, I don't know how well you can really see some of this chart, but I mean, I wanted to include this chart because if you look, every one of these, I mean, what is there, 12? I don't know, something like that? Every one of them replaces 22.
14.
Yeah. Every one of those replaces 22. So you gotta ask yourself, like, when you go to a supply house, which one are you gonna buy? I mean, does the supply house have all of them? No. I don't know any supply house that's gonna stock, you know, but maybe 1 or 2 of these. And there are some really good ones out there. Again, like I said, that R32, you can see it as a base component in a lot of these refrigerants. There's one down there. So it's not that we're not going to be used to some of these refrigerants going forward. It's just been in a mixture of a replacement. So one of the refrigerants that kind of won out on a 22 retrofit if you're doing a compressor is 407C for air conditioning. The glide is typical at 10. I mean, you can see some of these. I mean, this one is saying it's 3, 434. In a lot of testing that I've seen from other companies, they haven't seen 3. So they don't, you know, it's one of those under lab conditions type of standpoint. All the rest of them, I would say, they're probably pretty close on to what they really truly are as a glide. So the separation of where that refrigerant is going to have. But like I said, I mean, the main thing is, there's so many different refrigerants for replacement of 22. I mean, it's ridiculous. It's mind-boggling.
What do you do about the oil?
Well, again, like I said, if it's a new compressor, it's going to have POE.
Yeah.
And all of these refrigerants are going to be, I mean, you got 422B, which POE is on the last side of it, but it's not a problem to use it.
But the oil in the system is mineral.
Like I say, if you're going to a new compressor, unless you have an oil trap somewhere out there, you know, like a line that does one of those,
Yeah.
you're not gonna have oil trapped out there somewhere in the system. The bulk of it is going to be in that compressor. So when you change to a compressor that has POE oil, and you're going to put 22 or any of the replacements in there, you could have up to 25% mineral oil in a POE system.
See, now I don't know if it's going to drop too
No.
much.
Well, that's in a 410.
No,
410 is really sensitive, isn't it?
no.
The blend, I mean.
The thing is, the reason why POE POE is used versus mineral versus alkyl benzene, or anything else for that matter, is that 22 and all the CFC refrigerants, the molecules of it bonded great with mineral oil. I mean, they just love to bond to it, travel around the system. So you really never had an issue with oil traveling throughout the system and lubrication. Problem they ended up finding out was R22 and POE and a lot of the other refrigerants, they kind of use velocity to get around the system more so than binding. So it does create some issues to have some mineral in a POE system. I don't care what refrigerant you're talking, it's not going to do any harm. You know, like whenever the refrigeration guys were the first ones to go through it, because 134A was the first gas that everybody had to worry about with POE. And there was so much stuff, like you had to buy a refractometer to test the oil, you had to buy new gauges that were 134A, you could not use them on anything else. Ask a refrigeration guy today if they've got a dedicated set of 404 or 134A gauges. They don't. They don't. Air conditioning guys went through it probably, what, 10 years ago? 12, maybe 15 years ago?
Yeah.
With 410? 20, maybe 20, it's called 20.
20, yeah.
All the time.
Yeah.
Every time.
So,
I thought with the 410, the waxy stuff we were getting was because they weren't getting the oil out of the system when it changes. Specifically when they just don't change the line sets on the 410. We had a lot of problems with the condenser belts plugging.
again, unless there's some sort of natural trap in a system, there shouldn't be really that much oil, especially if you're doing the proper practices for changing out to a 410 system. If you're reusing a line set, get flush, power it out with nitrogen, you know, pull a triple vacuum, make sure you're changing your oil in your vacuum pumps. You know, I mean, there's so many guys that buy a vacuum pump and it's like, yeah, I'm in for my gallon once a year, you know, or my quart once a year that I change my vacuum, you know what I mean? And it's just like, you're not doing any justice to anything. So, like I said, I just wanted to put this up there because, I mean, like, you counted, there was 14. There's probably a couple of more, you know, that are out there that just didn't make it on this chart. So the waters of what you could use for 22 are really, really muddied. And if you stick to the basics of what are we doing going forward, you know, these refrigerants here, 407, the base of it being 32, that's a refrigerant that's going forward. It makes sense to have this change already out there. And I don't want to say you're used to it, because it's not, I mean, it is the main component because it's first listed, but you're talking 40% of it probably. So it's not enough to really have it as a pure product in the system to really know a lot about it. So, so again, they're just basically saying that the alternatives to a 22 system, 422B, which United ended up going with 422B as opposed to anything else, just because of compatibility. Pressures were nothing more than really anything else that was out there. They weren't any lower, they really weren't any higher. The one nice thing was it can run on mineral oil. There are some of the other ones that were on that chart that if you read their retrofitting guidelines, they basically said that if you have a vertical rise of 10 foot, you have to change the oil. And that oil was POE. So if you're going to make a change to one of those refrigerants, and you're going to end up requiring an oil change, just go with 407. Because it's one of the better interim gases that are available, that have manufacturer support, that have industry support, wholesaler support, all that kind of stuff. Applications, I think this is pretty self-explanatory as far as just, you know, 422, 407, they're both for retrofit possibilities. It's just a matter of whether or not your compressor, if you're changing out a compressor, it's gonna have POE, go to 407. If you're not gonna do that, stick with the 422 and just put it in there. You got mineral in the system, it's fine. Just some retrofit guidelines. I'm not really sure. This is actually an interesting slide that I wanted her to put in here, although there was like a little short clip that I wish she would have put in here that it's not. But basically, it's an elastomeric gasket. That gasket is on a Schrader pin. So when you put your gauges on to a Schrader pin, that is sealing that Schrader pin from leaking. So the thing is, R22 would permeate elastomeric gaskets. And when it permeated, it swelled it, and it made a better seal. I mean, you very seldom ever had leaks at Schraders, unless they were over-tightened or under-tightened.
Oh, okay.
And there is a torque, actually, for Schrader pins, and there is a little tiny tool that just is like a breakaway. You kind of like screw it in, and it goes click, and you know you got it tight enough, and it won't tighten it any more than that. So, but R22 would permeate the gasket, okay? So you had an R22 system, compressor fails, you pop in a new one with POE oil, and you make the change over to one of these newer gases, and all of a sudden you got leaks now at Schrader pins.
Huh.
So everybody looked at it saying these new gases, they suck, man, they're terrible because all they do is make leaks. That's all they do is they make leaks.
Well, that's what the caps are for, aren't they?
A cap is not a reliable
Nobody
source of
likes to put
stopping a
caps
leak.
on. I see all the time a cap's not there.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's, you know, I mean, it's a sort of stopgap, if you will, you know, having a cap on there.
Oh, yeah, it's
You
got
know?
a nice washer on it.
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. But the problem is they ended up finding out it's not the new refrigerant. The problem is not having 22 in that system anymore.
The elastomer. So can you change the guts for the Schrader?
Yeah. You just put a new Schrader pin in.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because that has a new elastomer.
Yeah. And the thing is, the slide, or the actual little clip, they actually took a gasket, put it under a vacuum, and injected R22 into it, and vacuumed it actually into a seal. And then they put it into a system to make sure that it had, you know, like it was a brand new one to begin with, and they just wanted to make sure that they could run the test kind of quickly. So they put it into a system, let it run, pulled it out, and let the gasket sit there. Within minutes, that gasket started swelling.
Oh, okay.
The gasket's swelling because the R22 is trying to get out of it. So that's where your leaks come from. Is that gasket will outgas, expand, crack. R22 gets out. Now there's no seal because it's all shrunk down,
Oh, okay.
and the new refrigerant starts leaking out. So, like I said, it's not the new refrigerants. It's the 22 doing what it did, which wasn't a bad thing, but it's what you were faced with when you made some retrofits.
When the pressure goes away, it outgasses.
Not even so much the pressure, because 407 is very close to 22.
Yeah.
So it's not so much the pressure, it's just that it doesn't have that, I don't want to say inert, but it doesn't have that same gas that's surrounding it to keep it there. So when it knows that it's not there and it doesn't have that like pressure against it, so to speak, or pressure that's permeating to keep it there, it then outgasses. So,
Like nitrogen, if you're a human diver, you get nitrogen in your blood, and you go from a real, 100 feet down up,
you get the bends.
you get the bends.
Yeah,
Nitrogen outgas.
yeah, that's where they're running like the trimixes and stuff like that for diving.
He worked for NASA in open house or whatever at the Science Center, And he was saying that's why they used 100% oxygen in the space capsule. And that's why those 3 guys died, because there was a fire. And he was explaining the really complicated procedure to open the thing up and get out of there. The newer ones, you just do one lever and it gets rid of all the 15 latches all at once.
Oh, okay.
You do it, and they can get out much faster.
Yeah. So what to do with the 410 system now?
You're screwed.
Yeah.
You gotta kind of maintain it, limp it along until these people are ready to change it out to a new piece of equipment. When that equipment is going to be available, right now, we don't know. These manufacturers are still trying to decide. Some of them are still trying to decide what refrigerant they're going to be going to.
So new systems, I can't buy 22
No,
system.
done and gone.
410A,
410A.
that's it.
Yeah.
410A or 410A, what,
Well, right now, yeah.
screwed.
So, maintaining systems, chasing leaks, making sure that these people understand that filters have to be changed, belts have to be changed. You know, the shivs. You know, it's recommended from the manufacturers, and it's not a selling point. I mean, it actually is true fact. After every 5th belt change, replace the iron on it. Replace the pulleys.
That's the first time I heard that number. But, okay.
If it's an A or a B
Yeah.
belt, because A's and B's, most manufacturers adhere to the same standards, let's say, on a belt. On an A and B, your publicized runtime on one of those belts is about 22,000 hours. They do actually make a gauge for a pulley.
Yeah,
You put it in there.
yeah.
That's
It's like
like
this.
this.
Yeah.
And if
Put it in
you
there,
see
shine a light
daylight-
from behind, you can see daylight, yeah, you know.
Well, in A, you can use 410, or A,
4L.
4L, yeah, and a B of 5, yeah.
But that's really nice.
But those are not commercial belts,
No.
Yes, those are,
right?
they're weak.
So, yeah, there you go. And that's also, if you don't know your belt, it's got the V's, so you can actually put a belt in there and you can at least say, I know it's a B or I know it's an A or
Yeah,
something like that.
3A, 5A.
Yeah.
And
So,
then there's D's, but that's industrial, it's 1,000 horsepower.
yeah, there's C's and D's as well, yeah.
Double D's.
Double D.
You can't have double D's out there, absolutely. Triples even. So, new equipment.
What is that, Joe?
Shiz.
Cheers.
New equipment. 410 is still, like we said, still what's current. You go to replace a system, you're going to get a 410 system. The A2Ls, which we'll go into a little bit of understanding what an A2L is, are really not going to take effect for another 3 years. Because these manufacturers need to decide, number one, what they're going to go with. Number two, they need to change over all of their production and engineering to that new given refrigerant. So they have to work with compressor manufacturers to find out what their experience is with it. And then they have to take that testing, put it in their own unit, and figure out where they're going to go from there. And then obviously building codes, state and local, have to come into effect as well. They're trying. I mean, the thing that's kind of funny is all the manufacturers are telling us that we're trying to keep the equipment as much to the same size as we can. So it's already telling you that the equipment will probably increase in size. And it already did from 22 to 410. So I mean, the evidence of that is A coils. You know,
Those
I mean,
A-coils are 30 inches high.
Yeah.
They'll
I mean,
raise
they've
the
gone
roof.
to N coils and reverse
Raise the
W's.
ceiling up.
And, you know, I mean, they've got those new microchannel coils. Have you guys seen those yet?
Yeah,
Those
they're awful.
microchannels. Yeah, the inverted V's.
They're awful.
No, it's going back to the old ring,
Yeah,
only using microchannel.
Yeah.
Microchannel leak.
yeah. I think they're better than they were some years ago, and you know, I think they've learned a lot over the last few years that some of the manufacturers have been using them. There's better processes in putting copper to aluminum
Thank
as
God,
well.
because I tell you what, I had all kinds of leaks, new equipment, you know,
Yeah,
and it's real fragile too, you just touch it, you know, and
some of them are that thin. Yeah, some of them are.
I put a 25-ton rooftop up, and I was putting the disconnect on, and it slipped a little bit, cut that channel, there was no way to fix it. You could not weld it, you could not, I had a professional welder come out, gonna MIG weld or TIG weld the darn thing, couldn't do it, it was not comparable.
Yeah.
Had to get home and cut.
Thin wall, it's thin wall, and a lot of it has a special like rifling process done to them to increase efficiency.
Well, that's amazing,
And
there's
increase
oil
flow.
in there too, and you can't get it out, so you're trying to, put, you know, braise aluminum on there, and
Yeah.
it won't go.
No, aluminum is, unfortunately, it's here and it's gonna stay. I mean, that's the reality
Yeah,
of what we're looking at, I think.
Well, first it was condensers, now it's evaporators too.
Yeah. So, this basically is getting into the classifications of refrigerants. So, we've all, excuse me, I'm sorry. Up until what we know now, essentially, we've all dealt with non-flammable gas. Any of the 410, 22, all that kind of stuff. Anything that has an ASHRAE number. There are some gases out there that don't have ASHRAE numbers that claim that they're a replacement for 22 or 410. I've seen one of them out there that claims that they're a replacement for 410. I don't know why.
Butane?
No, it wasn't a butane.
No.
It definitely had a concentration of butane to it. There was no doubt about it.
Well, propane is a refrigerant in,
Yes.
Yeah, R290 is
It's-
yeah.
Yeah, and they're not classifying them as an A3, an A2. I mean, they're all A1. They're all A1. Flammable, yeah.
Period.
So, what we're going to be dealing with is, they basically, I'll just advance this because I think this one shows it. The A2L is what we're going to now be coming into. So these 32s, the 454s, they're going to be coming out for new equipment by 2025, if you will. They're all going to be classified as an A2L. That's a brand new classification that has been developed by ASHRAE because it's not an A1, it is flammable, but it's not an A3, and it kind of doesn't classify as an A2 in a way. So they created a new category for it, and basically, from my understanding, the L meant lower or lowest flammability on that scale.
Mm-hmm.
So, there are, like you see at the bottom, lower flammability refrigerants with the maximum burning velocity, and then it tells you what gasoline is. So, you can kind of get a sense of what you're talking about. You know, if you've worked on a 290 system or a propane system that has, 5 ounces or less, if that is ignited, it goes up like flash paper. I mean, it is just woof and gone. I mean, there's really no worry about it, I guess.
We'll have to evacuate that.
Yeah, yeah. The evacuation equipment, speaking of, with flammability, even though low, because it's classified as flammable, you are going to end up with new equipment too for recovery. It's going to be sparkless.
Huh.
So it has a soft start, brushless system.
Right.
So there's new equipment to deal with too now.
Oh my
So
God.
you'll be buying some new recovery or new evacuation,
Oh boy.
things like that. So, but the classifications, like I said, they were basically developed by ASHRAE so that we could classify refrigerants, saying that they're flammable, but at a lowest possible rate. Which is really important because when you start talking jurisdictional, state by state, some of these states immediately when they see something is flammable, then they're going to try and say no. So you have to hit them with the data, like at the bottom. You know, you have to hit them with, okay, here's what this burns at, here is what this burns at. You know, so there may be, you know, it can't be within X amount of feet of a dwelling. You know, so are you going to end up putting it 5 feet now, 8 feet away? Where do you mount the disconnect? Now do you have, you know, conduit or seal tight running down along the ground and coming up to a unit that's
You gotta seal the seal.
sitting way
Inside.
out somewhere? I mean, these are all things that, you know, are going to have to be defined by the manufacturers once the equipment is actually developed. And I hate to keep going back to that, but I mean, that's how new we are, but that's how quickly things are going to be pushed to go to this, though. I mean, it's already there. It's just a matter of these manufacturers adopting it. So, you know, some of the manufacturers already have. Daikin owns the patent on R32. So that R32, that base, they own the patent on it.
Wow.
They cross-license it, which basically means they allow other manufacturers to manufacture it if they have the means to be able to do that.
Where does R32 come from? Oil or?
Truly,
natural gas?
I do not know. I can find out and try and get back to you on it, but I do not know. I mean,
Yeah, Aldi's has, in their freestanding units,
Bunker
that can
cases
be
and stuff.
coolers or freezers, they have 290,
yeah.
but it's less than, what, 3 ounces or?
5.2, 5.3, I think it is, one of
Yeah,
those
something
two.
like that.
Yeah. Which they're trying to get that changed too, because over in Europe, which they've been using 290 for years,
Yeah,
their rate is actually 10 ounces.
yeah.
And America's like, we're sitting at 5.2. I mean, can we get to like 7.5?
Yeah,
You know, the manufacturers really want that.
yeah.
The reason why is because, let's say you're a manufacturer, let's say you're True, okay? And you're trying to compete against, you know, one of these little small manufacturer Chinese, Avantcos, okay? Avantco decides that, you know what, we really don't like, you know, having the constraint of 5.2 ounces because we make these really nice 3-door units,
Okay,
but we need more than 5.2 ounces to go into a 3-door.
3-door, yeah.
So traditionally it would have been a 134A. The new replacement for 134A is 513.
Right.
So Avantco as manufacturer says, we're just going to go to 513. We can put on 1 condensing unit now.
Okay,
All right. Now, you have somebody like True who says, no, we're pretty committed to this 290. You know, they look at it and go, well, we're putting 2 units on our system on our 3 doors, and Avantco's putting a 1 with 513.
yeah.
So it becomes a competitive issue. I mean, where it's going to end up on that side of things, I don't know, man. That's a really muddy water on that one because that's on the manufacturing end, and I just.
Well, if you have 1 unit, it's all or nothing. If you have 2, at least you got some cooling.
Oh, it's not even a matter of cooling. It's cost of equipment.
Yeah.
You know, because these Chinese coolers, which have kind of really come on over the last 5 or 10 years, these things are, yeah, they're junk. But you know what? They're so attractive to these business owners.
Oh, yeah.
They're so
Like
attractive,
this.
you know? I mean, because you're talking, I can buy a True for $5,000 that's a 3-door and it's got 2 units on it, or I can buy one of these Avantcos for $3,800.
Duh.
What are you going to do? I mean, you're going to buy $3,800. I can buy almost 2 of those for the same price of 1 True. They're going to do it.
Yeah.
That's what they're going to do. But, like I said, you know, R22, 410, all that stuff, it's all been non-flammable. And again, going forward, everything we're going to be dealing with, and I do mean everything we are dealing with, is going to be an A2L. Low flammability. I mean, we've already defined what lower flammability is in a way, but where that threshold works out to, where the government wants to cap that, we don't know yet. ASHRAE is really working close with the AIM Act people to try and come up with numbers that everybody feels comfortable with. So I think if we go back, you can see, you know, where we're at today in 2022, commercial refrigeration, California, you cannot put in commercial refrigeration unit that's R404 today. Their number is 750, take it or leave it, we don't give a shit. So again, you can see, because of not that many refrigerants are coming in at that 750 number, and manufacturers have not geared up for it, everybody else is pushing for that not to happen. So again, with that AIM Act, you're allowed a petition. People are petitioning hard. And manufacturers are listening, the government's actually listening, but again, a lot of times it ends up being a jurisdictional proposition. So 2024, they're talking about it in Washington State, and it's going to be only on chiller stuff is what Washington is saying.
That's the state of Washington?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and then 2025, that's where we come into play, being residential, commercial, air conditioning. So 2025 is when you can guarantee you're going to start seeing and using and quoting and installing an A2L refrigerator. If it doesn't even happen before that. Because again, at some point in time, because of the allocation rates that are available, these manufacturers may say, you know what, I'm not going to make 410A anymore. I'm just not going to do it. I don't want to burn up my allocations on a refrigerant that I'm considering to be dead.
Because I can sell two for one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, and then going out further, you got refrigeration to deal with, you've got the VRF. But VRF, I mean, here in the United States, we really only know VRF as minis, city multi-type units. But I think that, you know, is because of Daikin buying Train, I think that the influence in VRV stuff is probably going to become more popular. You're going to start seeing it more. And it actually really is good technology. I mean, I'm sure you guys are familiar with VRV and installing and everything, but, you know.
It changes quicker than you can bat an eye.
And the thing is, the reason why it's going to become more popular and especially going to be a mainstay in even smaller systems is the SEER rating. I mean, the things that they can do to slow these compressors down to still maintain pressure and still keep an efficiency is where it's at. Because that's what all of this is going to, the efficiencies and lowering that GWP number. I mean, if there's anything to take away from today, that is the two things, efficiency and GWP number.
Oh, when you slow the compressor down, the energy goes way down.
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Way down.
And especially if you're talking DC driven. I mean, it's nothing. I mean, it's like scary low. So again, the A2L. So here's where, like I say, that number 750 is the limit. That's where they want to be below. So everything else in those graphs, they're all going to be gone. 2025, January 1, 2025. And I mean it's coming quick, man.
Yeah, it's less than 3 years, guys.
It is.
410's gone then for manufacturers.
It's still going to be around. There's still going to be equipment, just like there was with 22. You know, when 22, then when they said, okay, stop manufacturing R22 on this date, what do you think the manufacturers did? They ran balls on walls trying to make R22 units. And then a lot of the manufacturers ended up finding a little caveat
With the dry units.
with the dry units that can run 407. So those were out for a couple of years before they finally said, no more of these either. You're skirting something that we don't like. We know what you're doing, we know what you're trying to do, and we know what the people in the field are doing. So no more.
So there are 22 units that
Had a POE compressor in them.
can have 407.
Yeah. So, I mean, we were selling them, and the guys are like,
10 years ago, I think they stopped that, didn't they?
yeah,
Dry units?
yeah. Well,
12 or 13.
no, I don't think it's been that long. Because we had them, I want to say we had them probably 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah, 3 years ago.
Yeah, maybe it was that, maybe, you know,
That's what happens.
conception of time just anymore, you know what I mean? It's just.
I'm chronologically challenged. So.
Exactly.
Chronological.
But, one of the things that they're telling us is the EPA is supposed to be issuing some proposed regulations that may change some things, may not. We don't really know. It depends on the adaptation of the AIM Act and how those things play out. The petitions that people put through for that, it can change the EPA ruling. Because the EPA is gonna have to take a back seat because they already said you're allowed to petition and you're allowed 2 years to look at what's gonna happen. So, let's see, adaptation, yeah, so I guess, basically what they're saying is that even though 410 systems, the production will stop, it's still in the pipeline. It's still gonna be there. I mean, they've already made provisions for continuing to have 410A. So if you've got units out there and you need to still service them, they've leaked, they've blown a compressor, what have you, you're still gonna be able to get 410. It's not like that day is completely stopped. And you can rest assured, believe you me, these manufacturers, because they knew the allocation was coming January 1 of this year, what do you think that they were trying to pump out as much as they could? 410. 410. So, alright, so substitutes going forward. So you've got residential, light commercial, and air conditioning heat pumps. These are some of the ones out there that are going to be replacing 410 for new equipment. Can't retrofit any of these into a 410.
Can I buy those today, right?
No. No manufacturer, with the exception of Daikin, has created R32 units. Now, here's the thing that I didn't quite understand. If R32 is a pure product, why would somebody look to go to one of these mix that have R32 in it?
Yeah.
I mean, why would you do
No.
that?
What's the point?
Part of the reasoning, as I understand it, is they have some form of anti-flammability introduced with the R32. So it becomes a different classification of refrigerant.
Is R32 flammable?
It's an A2L.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's an A2L.
L,
Yeah, A2L.
not a one,
So low flammability.
not a one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you won't see any A1 in refrigeration, air conditioning. It's just not going to happen in our
That's
industry.
fine.
So like I said, my question was, why would you mix 32 with something else to come up with something else? The reasoning is this: the GWP number, like we said, had to be below 750. So the thought is, if the number gets lowered to 500, that cuts out 32 completely then. As a pure component,
I got you. I got you.
454 will still be able to skate under that. The other thing is, from a manufacturer, look who is adopting it. Carrier, Johnson Controls, Rheem. Now, you gotta ask yourself, if the number's lower, and your big residential being Carrier and Rheem, why are they adopting that?
On the skirt of 500.
No, it's to be more, it's to push. It's to be able to market
Oh,
The
okay.
a
lower
more
GWP.
globally safe refrigerant.
Yeah.
So if the number does get lowered from 750 to 500, which, you know, they're
Bragging rights.
Yeah.
Right. Woo!
You know, I mean, it's one of those things, if it does get lowered, they don't think it's going to. It's something that, again, with the AIM Act has been proposed, probably won't go through, because they really like that 750 number. When they came out with it, they were really proud of it. Really, really proud of it. So, they don't want to admit something that is an interim again.
500 maybe now.
So, and then going forward, you've got these two, which are really low, but there's not enough testing on them. I mean, they've already been given an ASHRAE, they've already been manufactured. DuPont, Honeywell, those guys, they've already developed it, but there's been some issues with it as far as pressures. They're trying to iron out some things, so who's going to adopt any of that, we don't know. From a manufacturing standpoint, Carrier, I read an article, and this was years ago, when Carrier said that they were making the change to Puron when nobody knew it was really 410A, when they just kept calling it Puron, like it's their own gas, you know?
Yeah,
They, supposedly, they manufactured that line to be able to produce that equipment for 30 years, they said. And in all actuality, that 30 years is coming really close.
Well,
And they had no idea at
that's
that
up.
point in time.
It's up now.
Yeah, I mean, they had no idea at that point in time that 30 years was a magic number. Now, the thing that they said that they built into the line was the availability to change over to another gas.
except that's not happening.
Well, the caveat to all that is efficiency. Efficiencies are changing. Even though Carrier may have known that efficiencies may change, you may not be able to adapt for efficiency. So we'll see. We'll see with Carrier, you know, whether their master plan went to plan or not. Ream is kind of, I think they've really gone with the flow, and they just, like I said, they're looking at it from a marketing standpoint. We have one of the most globally friendly refrigerants that you can purchase in a unit. If you're trying to do your share for the environment, we're it. You know, and believe me, Carrier's not far behind if they're not trying to push it themselves already.
Remember the old Puron ads on TV?
Yeah. Yeah. So, the only other thing really is, so this, and this is getting technical, but it's kind of stupid. This file, the UL, this number, 3rd edition, this basically says that these numbers are true. There was a 4th edition that came out, which came after the 3rd, where these numbers changed.
Okay.
Huh.
Some of these numbers changed.
Up or down? Or both?
Both,
Okay.
but the majority of them did go down.
Okay.
So what happened was there was a few manufacturers that were skirting that 780-ish,
Oh,
and they got below that 750
okay.
because of the 4th edition that came out.
Oh, okay.
Well, when Honeywell, who is the largest manufacturer of refrigerant, when they started looking at this, they're like, these numbers are no good. These numbers are no good. We've proven this. Take a look at our facts.
Oh, okay.
Here's our data. Go
Yeah,
over
yeah,
it.
Yeah.
So even though there's a 4th edition of this,
Don't believe it.
it's bogus.
Yeah.
It's bogus. That's why everything you'll read, and believe me, you're not reading this. nobody, unless the people that put these presentations together are. You know what I mean? But that's the only reason why she put that in there. So again, these gases, the A2Ls, only new equipment. You will not be able to put R32 into a 410 system. There's nothing that's going to replace 410. Period. At this point, we think. I'll say that. So. Let's see, what is this one? Oh, this just throws some of the other ones into the mix on the GWP. So like I said, your R32, it's an A2L. 410 like pressure. So again, we're not introducing something that's going to be, 1,000-pound head pressure or anything like that. 454B, again, that's the Carrier, Johnson, Ream route. Same thing, still an A2L. Excuse me. These R1234s, I don't know if you guys have heard of any of these yet?
Yeah.
No. 1, 2, 3, 4, yes.
Yeah. ZE is a new one that came out recently, and there's been some buzz about it, but all of a sudden it died. And I was trying to get to the bottom of why, and it kind of led me down a rabbit hole that really never told me why exactly. So I just, you know, putting that out there, if you see ZE,
Don't need to know.
I mean, I don't know. It could crop back up. I don't know. But 1234A, they're saying was in automobiles. I don't know if you guys have ever heard that. I think it was BMW. I think started having problems, and the cars were catching fire.
Is that why?
Yeah. Yeah. And they ended up finding out it was a grounding issue. It was a grounding issue in the vehicles. They had to come up with a new way to ground the car because of the refrigerant in the system.
Static.
Yeah. So these A2Ls, they're really throwing like a wrench to us, you know. The ZD, I mean, it's an A1. We're not doing anything with an A1. The 744 CO2, yes, we are. I shouldn't say, I think earlier I said we'll never see an A1. I guess that's an exception, so I apologize for that. CO2, 744 CO2. CO2 is...
They are really hyping that out of Copeland, Emerson.
They are, and the reasoning behind CO2 being really hyped is because of Europe. I mean, Europe has been running CO2 for probably, I'm going to say 20 years now. I mean, we're that far behind on what's going on compared to Europe.
High pressure CO2, big time.
Yeah, cylinders, they're like the old 145 R12s, and they're twice as heavy. They're just, we've got them at work, and they're just, I mean, and the problem is with those two, because there's not a ton of tanks in the system. When they go out, we as a wholesaler want them back, like right away. Like you use them, bring them back. Don't let them sit on the dock for a week or a month or, you know, whatever, like a standard, you know, R22 type, you know, or 404 100-pound cylinder. Do not let them sit there because we'll start charging you because we want those tanks back. We have to get them filled for the next customer that needs them. So packaging, they're looking at different types of packaging. Nothing is really proven out yet that it could be an answer for anything. So, but like I say, you can see at the top that 750 number, everything to the right, gone. Everything on the left is all the new A2L that we're going to be seeing in 2025.
What are you seeing as far as CO2 being used right now out of your store?
Walmart, supermarket,
Rack system?
rack systems. They're putting in these smaller chillers with heat exchangers, and they're really cool systems. I mean, they really, really are, because your volume of refrigerant, instead of being thousands of pounds, can just be, you know, 800 pounds, 500 pounds, depending on the system, 200 pounds, depending on the system. And all they're doing is running a glycol exchanger with system pumps.
Yeah, subcritical and upper critical.
Yeah. So, I think Heinen's has a CO2 system out there, I believe. We've sold some to NASA. They've got some testing chamber type stuff that they deal with. Other than that,
I'd be curious if you're selling those chiller systems. I'd like to see them.
we have not. We have not. I don't even know. I don't even know the manufacturer of the ones that I believe Walmart in this area has two. I believe they have two of them.
Do you know which ones?
I want to say I think it was Avon or Lorraine was one of them, and the other one I'm not positive where it's at.
Okay.
Avon, Lorraine, or some is
Yeah,
ringing a
we're near
bell.
the 10300 Brook Park. That's a big one.
Yeah, I'm not positive. Like I say,
They just added though a whole bunch of the refrigeration stuff because it used to be without food and now it's a lot of food.
yeah, that super Walmart concept, whatever you
We
want.
got a lot of EPRs.
So this one is just the future. Again, A2L is what we're looking at. There's not a one refrigerant, one size refrigerant, whatever, that's gonna fit every application. So, depending on the system, you could be one manufacturer for one thing and another manufacturer using a completely different refrigerant for something else. You know, I think the days of having to carry, 22 and 404 and 410 and 422 and all these other, I think that's starting to dwindle. I think those days are, I don't want to say fast coming to an end, but 2025 is fast away. It's pretty quick. So I mean, we'll see what happens. I mean, maybe you're just adding more gas to everything you have because you still have to service stuff.
Don't forget, you have to have recovery tanks for each of those. Refrigerator carrier, right?
Yes, sir.
The
Except for
whole
CO2.
bin is full of tanks.
Just put it in the atmosphere.
So, depending on the type of system, the application, charge limit, like we were talking with some of these refrigerants, there may be charge limits. With an A2L, there really shouldn't be. But again, that's all part of that AIM Act and how people, what type of paperwork they send in for review. Energy, like we said before, the energy efficiency. The equipment is probably going to get bigger, but efficiencies should go up as well. But all that's being tested. I mean, it really is.
All right then.
And then what else? Yeah, basically, all we're really saying here is there's going to be certifications needed to handle these A2Ls. There's no doubt about it, because you're talking something that's flammable now.
So a plug for that, guys, is next week or next month we're having ESCO here via Zoom, and we can take all these courses online and then proctor them here for the tests. So
The only thing I'm not saying it's not good, but the only problem with that is some of the manufacturers may not authorize ESCO for the training that they want a technician to have.
well, this is for the A2L refrigerant specifically.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is you may have carrier that says you have to attend our classes to buy a unit, dealer or not.
That's still, we still have to have the A2L cert anyway.
Well, yes,
So,
I'm not
yeah.
disputing that fact,
In
but
addition,
yeah, there may be manufacturer certifications needed. I mean, there was when 290 came along. You know,
290 level.
Oh, yeah.
our SES worked, I know, to try and, come up with a common test that could hit, you had Tralson, Bevair,
Right.
True, all these manufacturers that all had something different, and they all wanted you to go to theirs because they all wanted a sales pitch out of it. But that's where people started stepping in, like, this is getting ridiculous, man. You can't have every certification from every one of these single manufacturers. This is getting ridiculous. So hopefully, I mean, I'm not saying that ESCO doesn't have the training,
No, I know what you mean, yeah.
but there may be a secondary thing to come along that ESCO can do to solidify the training.
It's like getting the
for-
608 and then having to take all the other tests.
Yeah, exactly.
So interesting about the 290 is that, and I don't remember what butane is, propane's 290,
600.
600.
Mhm.
Those two refrigerants
Butane.
decades ago were in use and are the most efficient I don't know,
Oh,
I haven't
yeah.
looked at the charts, but they were the most efficient out there.
Yeah.
And a lot smaller charge,
Yeah,
lots, not
Yeah.
this, you need that.
Yeah.
but you had that flammability drawback to it.
Yeah.
There's that.
So,
Change your name to Elizabeth?
Yeah,
so that's it. I want to thank you guys for coming. I appreciate your time. And
we had 5 guys online.
okay, cool. Very good.
Thanks, Ted.
Appreciate it.
Hey,
Appreciate
Tom,
it.
where's everybody?
We got 2 guys down now, and the other guys are right here watching.
2 guys down?
Yep.